All right, good Thursday morning, everyone. This is Mike Montefusco from the National Weather Service office in Wakefield, Virginia. This is our weekly Thursday briefing. We will be discussing our weekly coastal storm, or our weekend coastal storm that is expected to move offshore of the Atlantic coast over the upcoming weekend. Just some important updates to note here. Again, you'll see those as we go through the slides here. Getting through the highlights. Again, we are watching that coastal storm looking to develop south of the region as we get into the day tomorrow into tomorrow night. That'll be impacting the local area as we get into the upcoming weekend. Heavy rain and areas of flash flooding are possible with this storm, with the rainfall totals greatest along the immediate coast. We'll be getting into some high winds, which we'll be talking about shortly. King tides are going to exacerbate the coastal flood impacts, which again is going to be track dependent with that low, which we are going to get into the bulk of the briefing, as well as some surf zone conditions that are going to get increasingly dangerous as we get into the upcoming weekend. Taking a look at the weather pattern as we get into the upcoming weekend, keep an eye on this low pressure system along the Gulf Coast here, the Panhandle of Florida. That'll be moving offshore of the southeast coast tomorrow into tomorrow night, and that will develop into our coastal low that will be impacting the region over the upcoming weekend. Again, that coastal low bringing increasing chances for rain and showers along the coast, mainly as we get into the day on Saturday night, with deteriorating conditions during the day on Sunday into Monday. In terms of excessive rainfall outlook, this is from the Weather Prediction Center, our excessive rainfall outlook. Again, mainly along the coast, especially from the southeast coast on Saturday, mainly for Saturday night into early Sunday morning, and then kind of shifting a little bit farther north into the Hampton Roads area and up towards the eastern shore as we get into the day on Sunday. A marginal risk extended back for the remainder of the area, with periods of heavier rain expected across the area on Sunday, and that could continue into the day on Monday as well, with a marginal risk hanging on across the eastern shore and portions of the coastal portions of the northern neck on Monday. In terms of the rainfall totals, this is only through Saturday night with this graphic here on the left, so bear that in mind. This is rain totals through early Sunday morning. So generally totals up to about a half inch or so across the Richmond metro area, I-95 corridor. Points to the east of that will have the heavier totals, likely. So those totals, basically the peninsulas down into Southside Hampton Roads, Northeast North Carolina, eastern shore of Maryland and Virginia, heavier totals out that way. So certainly be on the lookout for that. Rainfall chances, you can see here, are starting to ramp up and respond as we get closer. So certainly later in the day on Saturday into Sunday night, Saturday night, Sunday, those rain chances are ramping up, and expect that trend to kind of continue as we get into the next couple of days here. So again, with these rainfall totals, do note that additional rainfall is likely as we get into Sunday and Monday. So these totals are likely to be a little bit higher than what you see here. In terms of the event total, 2 to 4 inches of rain is expected along the eastern portions of our area. Those worst case totals, you could have local totals that are in the 4, 5, 6 inch range, certainly along the immediate coast. So certainly bear that in mind. Timing for the worst looks like it does come on the day into the day on Sunday into early Monday morning. And in terms of the coastal flood impacts, bear in mind that this rainfall might exacerbate those coastal flood impacts that are occurring with the fresh water kind of impeding that ongoing tidal surge as well. So kind of bear that in mind, certainly in the lower bay, lower rivers as well for that. In terms of the high wind potential as we get into the weekend into early next week, we are looking at, again, that elevated potential for, 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts, a little bit higher along the immediate coast as we get into certainly Saturday night, but most likely Sunday evening into Monday. So that period is the period of greatest concern for us, especially for our coastal communities. Getting into the maximum wind gust forecast, again, this is in miles per hour here, not knots. Again, that kind of window of greatest concern for us Sunday morning into the day on Monday. That's going to be our biggest period of winds out of the northeast. So those winds, gusts of 50, 55 mile per hour plus are possible along the immediate coast, with resultant power outages also a possibility. So certainly bear that in mind as we get into the that period later in the weekend into the day on Monday. Again, looking at your regional forecast summary real quick, just kind of looking at it, you can kind of see just remaining a little bit cooler temperature-wise, remaining into the 70s across the area for highs. There is the potential for some frost products potentially being needed later on tonight out in the Piedmont. We'll keep you updated on that kind of back burner type stuff with what's going on, but certainly bear in mind that is some potential for that as we get into the evening tonight. Otherwise, kind of getting a little bit milder with that onshore flow as we get into the weekend into early next week. Rain chances certainly going to ramp up. Later Saturday, Sunday into early Monday, those rain chances are going to remain high, and we'll keep in mind as we go through the model discussion, which we'll talk about shortly. Rip current forecast here. Again, some large breaking waves are going to create those dangerous surf zone conditions. So high rip risk today and tomorrow, and then that is going to continue through the upcoming weekend. Incidentally, the rip currents, the last rip current forecast for our forecast office is going to be with tomorrow's cycle. So certainly the rip current risk is going to remain an issue, but the last rip current forecast for our area is going to be during the day for tomorrow's forecast. So just bear that in mind. You're going to likely see continued mention of the rip currents as we get into the weekend, but the actual last rip current forecast will come tomorrow. In terms of tidal flooding, and this is obviously one of the bigger impacts here, for today and tomorrow, we are looking at some resultant kind of lingering nuisance to low-end minor flooding forecast across especially the lower bay, the James River along the immediate coast here. So those issues will continue with kind of nuisance to low-end minor type flooding, some up to around a foot or so of inundation possible with that. Certainly as you get into the weekend, that's going to be the biggest issue. And certainly the lower bay is kind of lighting up into moderate to potentially some major flooding as well. That's going to be a bigger issue, especially as we get into the day on Sunday as that low kind of approaches. We are going to be watching for the potential for some pretty significant surge moving into the lower bay, moving into our tidal rivers during that time frame and along the Atlantic coast as well, certainly. Getting into the individual sites here, I wanted to get into a little bit of a model discussion really quickly just to kind of bring home some of the differences here. This is just basically some model ensembles. The GEFS, which is a collection of the GFS family of models, and the EPS, which is a collection of the European models. The GEFS, this is for 0Z on Sunday. So this is basically Saturday night into early Sunday morning. Again, we're watching our low kind of lift up along the Carolina coast and then moving into our area as we get into Sunday morning and then kind of lifting up offshore of our coast. And you'll notice a lot of these models, each of these little red numbers is basically one of the models low centers for each individual model. And a lot of these are kind of clustered basically along or just on the mid-Atlantic coast here as you get into Sunday night into Monday. And that kind of eventually kind of lifts on out as you get into later in the day on Monday and then certainly into Tuesday morning. The European, the EPS, this is basically a collection of the EPS models. And at that same period, Saturday night, you can kind of see it's a little bit more scattered offshore, and it is kind of bouncing off the high to the north here a little bit more, and it is a little bit farther offshore and then kicking out again Tuesday. So the models are agreeing that there is a little bit of a clearing out period later Monday into Tuesday, so that's good. But in terms of model differences, the European model, the European family of models, is a little bit farther offshore, and it has been a bit more consistent than the GFS. However, bear in mind that the GFS, or this GEFS, is basically providing, what you're seeing here, which is a really strong surge of northeast winds that is bringing that surge of water coming in as you get into Sunday afternoon. So basically our worst tide cycle as we get back into the actual meat of the briefing here, your worst cycle is you're starting to get into it. As we start looking at this tidal overview, it's going to be with this Sunday into Sunday afternoon tide cycle. So that's going to be the one of greatest concern as it appears right now, is getting into that Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon tide cycles. Those are going to be the ones of greatest concern. And we're going to kind of break it out in a couple of slides. And once we get through these, I'll talk about that here. But here in the upper bay, it is a little bit lower. We are waiting for a little bit of more of a surge as you get into Sunday night, Monday. But certainly some nuisance tidal flooding is possible the next couple of days. We don't be remiss if we didn't mention that. But certainly kind of deteriorating conditions, rising tidal anomalies, some problems as we get into Saturday evening tide cycle with, again, bigger issues Sunday night. Back into the lower bay. Again, some tidal issues in the next couple of tide cycles, tomorrow morning, Saturday morning. But again, deteriorating conditions for the Saturday tide cycles, and then getting into that worse tide cycle as you get into Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon and evening. On the ocean side, once again, nuisance to low and minor type flooding. There is the potential for some near minor to moderate flooding for like Oyster up that way and along the coast at Duck. So certainly watch that the next couple of tide cycles. But again, deteriorating Saturday, Sunday, and then into Monday. So that's a little bit farther off. What you see here on the tide on the hydrograph, it's a little bit farther out. It's what we say 6 forecast periods out. It's basically Sunday night, Monday, tide cycle wise. Before I get into the marine, real quick, I want to go back to the models real quick. Getting into I'll break out 3 just for the lower bay. And again, you're kind of watching this period, 12 UTC right here. That is basically right at early Sunday morning, right at 8 a.m. Sunday morning. And you're watching this orange line here. That is our surge of water coming in. And again, this is GEFS based. So this is going to be your worst case scenario to plan for. And if you're looking at the hydrograph, basically your kind of worst case scenario here is getting into, easily with respect to Sewell's point, you're getting into 5.5 being moderate, 6.5 being major. And your worst case scenario kind of goes upwards of, 6.5, 7 feet. So you're kind of watching this surge coming in, and that the timing of this surge is going to be critical, because if this comes in right during the low tide, you're basically going to lock in a really, really high tide here Sunday morning. So we're kind of really going to be watching the timing of this surge and the intensity of this surge coming in, and watching what that actually turns into as we get into Sunday night. So certainly the middle of the road kind of official forecast that you see here is basically 5.5 to 6 feet. So basically right into moderate flooding, approaching major. So certainly that's for Sewell's point. Getting to Yorktown. Again, we're watching this surge coming in during this time, Sunday morning, getting into Sunday evening here at 0Z on Monday. That's right at 8 p.m. on Sunday evening. So again, you're watching the timing of this surge that comes in the lower bay. You're watching that water coming in, that envelope of water coming in, and you're watching how high this tide cycle gets. If it's a little bit sooner and we lock in this high tide, that could be a potentially really, really high envelope of water, really, really high tide cycle that comes in. So certainly we're going to need to watch the timing of this, and we're going to have to watch how high that tidal anomaly gets. So certainly we're going to need to watch that. Even just the kind of the middle of the road forecast with the GEFS is getting us right to 5.5 feet, which at Yorktown is into major flooding. So we're going to need to watch that as well. And lastly, at Lynn Haven, again, we're watching this surge. The middle of the road type forecast is right at 6.2. So the high end of this is even closer to 7. So that's some really high water, some really high numbers that we're talking about here. So we're going to have to quantify this surge. Number one, figure out the intensity of that surge. Number two, we're going to have to figure out the timing of that surge. So that's when we say, there is some details that need to be worked out. That's kind of what we're getting at when we're talking about this. We're going to need to see how close that low gets. We're going to have to see the timing of that envelope of water, that surge that comes in, and we're going to have to, kind of suss out how quickly that low exits Sunday night into Monday. So then those are kind of things that we're going to be working out over the couple of days here. But when you're looking at the pets, just realize this is kind of based off the GEFs. This is going to be the high end water to kind of plan off of over the next couple of cycles here. All right, let's go back to the marine forecast here and start to look at the overview. We do have a storm watch that is in effect for our coastal waters, and the gale watch in effect for our eastern Virginia rivers, our Currituck Sound, and the Bay. We are going to have to kind of keep an eye on the mouth of the Chess Bay here to kind of see maybe we're approaching storm watch criteria down there. We're not quite into that time range just yet, but keep an eye on that for our forecast update this afternoon. We'll take a look and see how that looks going forward. We're still looking at the latest information, but at the very minimum, we are looking for northeast winds to increase into sustained gale as we get into that time frame, Saturday evening into Sunday, and that those winds kind of continuing into the Sunday evening, early Monday morning time frame. So again, plan for the worst to be in that kind of time range, which we'll see as we time it out. In the storm watch area, we will have gusts getting into the 45 to 50 knot range out here in the coastal waters, potentially getting into the lower bay. So we're going to have to watch onto that as well. Seas, we're going to see those building really quickly as well as we get into Sunday with that surge of water coming in. Kind of getting into the surge potential or the marine threat potential, again, getting into significant to extreme. These colors kind of getting into that storm range. You're kind of seeing that kind of bleed into the bay, which is why we're talking about maybe the potential for a storm watch for the lower bay. We're not quite there yet. We are looking at it, but that is something we are kind of investigating and looking at as we're going into the model cycle here this afternoon. So just know that is something we are keeping an eye on. In terms of the marine wind overview, again, you can kind of see these deteriorating conditions. Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday morning. Worst of it kind of looks like at this time it will be during the day on Sunday, with those northeast winds kind of increasing, cranking up into the mid 40s to around 50 knots, especially offshore into the mouth of the bay. So certainly sustained gale conditions are forecast at this time, with gusts to storm force again looking increasingly likely. So we are looking at that. Hence the storm watch that is effect at this time. Breaking out the summary for you again, once again, Sunday during the afternoon into the evening hours, that does look like the worst of it right now. So that is where we're looking for that. Gusts along the immediate coast will be kind of on this range, kind of in the Cape Henry range in terms of knots, kind of getting into that range along the immediate coast. In terms of seas, this is kind of where we're going with respect to building seas. Some very dangerous wave heights starting to build, 12 to 16 feet, up to 17, 18 feet. Some occasional wave heights, certainly you might have some occasional wave heights that get up to around 20, 22 feet, somewhere in that range offshore in the offshore waters. So certainly some dangerous boating conditions are anticipated with those. In terms of the wave and sea forecast, again, you can kind of look at that. You can see getting into just these occasional wave heights getting into the 15 to 20 foot range during that time frame. This only goes through 8 a.m. on Sunday morning, so bear that in mind. That this is what we're looking at with respect to the occasional wave height. The significant wave certainly getting up into that range offshore as well. especially once we get beyond this 8 a.m. period. So look for this likely to go up a bit as the time range kind of gets into the day on Sunday with the updated briefing later on today, and then tomorrow certainly. That is what I have for now. Thank you all for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. If you have anything additional, just let us know. Have a great day, everyone.